The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody. This is the IES webinar for today, welcoming the IEA SHC Solar Academy. Please hold the line while we wait for more attendees to join. Welcome everybody. This is the IES webinar for today, welcoming the IEA SHC Solar Academy. Please hold the line while we wait for more attendees to join our call. All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar hosted by the International Solar Energy Society IES and by the IEA SHC Solar Academy. We are very pleased to have all of you here, and we are especially happy to welcome back the IEA SHC Solar Academy for 2020. This is the first Solar Academy webinar IES is hosting this year, and we are looking forward to many more exciting webinars to come. Today's webinar will introduce us to renovating historic buildings towards zero energy, and the webinar will last 1.5 hours and will of course include a Q&A section for you, the audience. My name is Arabella and I am the Communications and Outreach Officer here at the IES HQ in Freiburg, Germany, and I will give you a short introduction into IES and the work we do, as we have many new participants joining us on the webinar today. The International Solar Energy Society IES is a non-profit UN-accredited membership NGO. Our vision is 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. IES represents a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. IES works together with like-minded organizations from countries all around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. There are many benefits to joining IES, and you can find out more on our homepage. Some of the benefits are the exclusive access to presentations and webinar recordings such as today's in the IES webinar archive. IES members can also get discounts and even free registration to IES events and partner events. Every month, IES publishes a newsletter for our members where you can follow our progress and share your news. Members can also subscribe to our academic journal Solar Energy at a reduced price. So we welcome those who are not yet members to join today to support our work. For those who are already a member, we thank you for your support. Now for some brief information on the webinar and especially the Q&A section before we start. During today's webinar, our expert speakers will give their presentation on renovating historic buildings towards zero energy. This will be followed by a Q&A section for you, the audience. For the Q&A section, we invite you to send in your questions and we are looking forward to your participation. When sending in the questions, please write who the question is for and keep your question short and precise. Please feel free to start sending in your questions at any time throughout the webinar. Additionally, today's webinar will feature a series of mini videos. Should you experience any technical difficulties in seeing the videos, please do stay online. This usually only lasts for a few seconds. Now, I'm happy to introduce our moderator for today, Bärbel Epp. Bärbel will introduce you to our speakers and guide us through the Q&A session. Bärbel is the founder and managing director of the agency solrico, Solar Market Research and International Communication, a network for solar thermal professionals worldwide. She is responsible for the international newsletter at solarthermalworld.org, which has been dedicated exclusively to the solar heating and cooling sector. Bärbel graduated in physics and looks back at more than 20 years of journalism in the field of solar thermal energy. Now, I'm happy to hand over to you, Bärbel. Bärbel, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Arabella. Thanks for the nice introduction and also a nice welcome from my side to all of you. I'm the moderator of the webinar today, and I will give you a short introduction into IEA SHC, which is one of the co-organizers of this webinar. So I hope that you see my screens now. Well, the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program is one of several technology collaboration programs under the International Energy Agency. It's actually one of the oldest ones since 1977. We have 20 member countries and the European Commission, as well as 4 international organizations which support the work. More than 400 experts from all 5 continents grouped together in research platforms, and they cover a big range of topics. I have listed here some of them. PV thermal is a current topic, district heating, industrial solar heat, industrial water management, facade integration, neighborhood planning, and compact heat storages. And as well, historic buildings, as we hear today. You're very welcome to look into the webinars which we have done over the years with ISIS, and you find them all in their recording and the presentations on this sub-page, Solar Academy webinars. You can also watch videos. We have done regular videos with experts on our conferences, which you find on our YouTube channel. And you can ask for on-site trainings by our program, which is possible in IEA member countries, and the past trainings were in China, South Africa, and UK. Where you can find more information, certainly on our website, iea.shc.org. If you have particular questions, you can contact the Secretariat. You can follow us on social media. The Twitter channel is IEA SHC. Or LinkedIn, we have a group which is called IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program, and under YouTube. Today's webinar's title, as Arabella already told us, is Renovating Historic Buildings Towards Zero Energy. This is also the name of a working group within the IEA, which has a number, and we consider it, or we call it as short-term Task 59. So we will talk today always about the research program Task 59. And I have the pleasure to introduce you to all the speakers of today's webinar. Usually we interrupt between the speeches, but today we have a very special setting, and you will have, like Arabella said, a multimedia mix of films where end consumers will talk or give their point of view on the renovated houses, and you will hear some input by the experts to respond to the tasks. And so this will be like a continuous presentation. And Alexandra Troy, she will guide us through the webinar, and which is partly mixed with films and slides. Alexandra is actually the chair of this, what we call Task 59, and she's co-founder and vice head of EUREC Institute of Renewable Energy in Italy. Her main field of research are historic buildings and cultural heritage, so a real expert in this field. The second speaker is Walter Hüttler. He will inspire us through successful case studies. And this is also the task of his subgroup within Task 59. They are responsible for collecting best practice cases of renovated historic buildings. He is managing partner at E7 Energy Innovation and Engineering in Vienna, Austria. And beforehand, he was working with the Austrian Energy Agency, and he was also research fellow at the Vienna University. The third, Thor Bergström, will introduce a systematic approach for decision-making and planning of renovation projects. Thor leads within Task 59 the group which is called Multi-Disciplinary Planning Process. He is professor for building conservation at Uppsala University in Sweden. And he's also coordinator of the Swedish research program on energy efficiency in historic buildings. Fourth, we will have Pavel Sevela. He represents a tool that supports the retrofitting process of historic buildings. Pavel chairs the group within the Task 59 that identifies replicable retrofit solutions from case studies. He is project engineer at the Leopold Franzens University in Innsbruck, Austria, since 2013, but he was also working as a standalone building designer in his earlier career. So the last one, Daniel Herrera, is actually a close colleague of Alexandra. He will discuss the different steps within renovating of a rural historic building. He is part of the organizing team of Task 59 and senior researcher at EUREC in Italy since May 2017. His focus is on the development and validation of new retrofit solutions. Originally, he's from Spain and he was trained as an architect. So you see, we have a very dedicated group of experts on historic buildings, and I'm really looking forward to this interesting presentation, and I will hand now the floor over to Alexandra Troy, who will lead us as a narrator through the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bärbel, for the nice introduction, and welcome also from my side. The goal of this webinar is, as Bärbel said, to present the IEA SHC Task 59 and to show in a clear and comprehensible way to stakeholders how they can profit from the work carried out in the research project. The building owners and the design team have always been central in our project, and that is why we wanted them to be part of this webinar too, which means that the needs and the concerns of those who have to take the decisions in the renovation process of historic buildings are here presented by real owners and architects that have worked on several projects of building retrofit in South Tyrol in Italy. Let's start listening to them and explaining why they decided to renovate their buildings.
Wir haben uns entschlossen, den Huberhof zu renovieren, weil es alles so verletzbar gewesen ist. Dann bin ich, als ich mit der Frieda zusammen gewesen bin ich bis jetzt nicht gewesen bei ihr, aber dann haben wir gesagt, wir gehen aus und dort den Jungen übernehmen und dann richten wir für etwas. Dann hat die einseitige Mädchen da viel mitgeholfen, geschaut, was wir da, dass das so wird nicht alles bis jetzt ist. Das ist dann mir einmal gedacht, neu zu bauen. Nein.
Ich muss hier anfangen, ich weiß nicht, haben wir etwas stehen gemäßt, weil wir haben keine Heizung gehabt, kein Wasser. Wir haben uns für einen Umbau entschieden, weil uns das alte Haus wichtig gewesen ist, speziell halt wichtig gewesen ist.
Wir leben seit ca. 5 Generationen da und es sind etwas über 100 Jahre und wir fühlen uns eigentlich ziemlich wohl seit der Zeit da. Und heint, wir leben da leben da 3 Generationen. Das sind zum einen meine Eltern, dann ich mit meiner Schwester und noch eine Schwester mit der Freundin und dann noch die 2 Kinder von der Schwester.
Vor dem Umbau haben wir überhaupt als 2 beheizte Räume gehabt. Und das ist allem in Winterszeit, weil wir recht einen Monat keine Sonne haben, ist und öfter mal ziemlich kalt hergegangen.
Nach dem Umbau für uns geändert hat sich, dass das Haus jetzt innen überall warm ist, nachdem dass es gut isoliert ist und eine Zentralheizung hat. Früher war die Stube beheizbar und der Herd in der Küche. Und wenn es ganz kalt ist gewesen, musste man in 3 Orten Feuer machen. Und das braucht es jetzt nicht mehr, ist eine wesentliche Sicherheit auf den Brandschutz.
Wenn uns der Architekt das erste Projekt gezogen hat für ein Haus, war das für uns ganz toll. Die Vorfreude ist noch gleich schon gestartet. Für mich persönlich war es fein oder halt schon der Gedanke daran, dass ich und der Matthias separat auf einen Stock wohnen können, war für mich ganz wichtig, weil wir zuerst alle auf einen Stock miteinander gelebt haben.
Wir haben uns entschlossen, das Haus zu sanieren, aber die Überlegung ist noch gewesen, daneben da eine Seite zu stellen. Aber weil das Haus unter Denkmalschutz steht, nachher ist die Überlegung gewesen, die Erweiterung ein bisschen schwierig, weil und dann sind wir da auf die Idee gekommen, daneben da eine Seite zu stellen. Aber das ist gleich wieder vollgeladen worden, weil die Wurzel in dem Haus gewesen ist und wir sind da ich bin da aufgewachsen und ich will das in meiner Kinder wieder weitergeben.
Für mich ist ein Hof ein wichtiges Instrument im Dorf für die Wirtschaft, für das ganze Zusammenleben auch mit den anderen Leuten und für uns selber, dass man einfach davon leben kann und dass auch mehrere Leute davon leben können.
Ein Südtirol ohne Bauernhöfe, ohne historische Strukturen für mich nicht vorstellbar. Und als Planer, wenn ich auf dem Meierhof aufmerksam geworden bin oder wenn ich gefragt worden bin, den Meierhof zu sanieren. Der Meierhof ist ein ganz besonderer Bauernhof. Er steht nicht auf einer Alm, er steht nicht auf dem Berg, er steht am Anfang, am Dorfeingang von Bad Schinks. Er hat Zinnen, es ist ein herrschaftlicher Bauernhof, eine besondere Herausforderung deswegen. Und es ist extrem wichtig, wenn Bauern solche Ansitze besitzen, dass sie die nicht als eine Last empfinden, sondern als ein Juwel, das man herausputzen kann und in dem es ist ein Alleinstellungsmerkmal. So einen Bauernhof zu besitzen, das Glück muss man erst haben.
Actually, you have heard that the reasons to retrofit the building are manifold, that often owners are aware of the importance of their historic buildings and want to improve the living conditions as a best way to maintain them. However, they might not imagine that it is actually possible. The interviews here were asked afterwards, and still in some cases you could hear their initial doubt, will it be possible? I'd therefore like to invite Walter Hüttler from E7 in Vienna, Austria, who leads within Task 59 the topic of creating a solid knowledge base and to introduce you the Hyber Atlas, a collection of best practice cases. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra. Hello and good afternoon. We have now already seen a couple of cases, of different cases from the rural area with different starting points. And it's my pleasure now to guide you through the best practice database we already developed, because it's one of our specific goals in our project to identify good practice examples of historic building renovations and make them available to other interested groups and, so to say, provide a source of inspiration for our target groups. So who are our target groups? We are addressing quite different stakeholders with maybe different interests and different understanding of the complexity of a renovation process. Specifically, of course, building owners, but also architects, planners, engineers, and of course, public administration and people from the heritage community. So speaking about historic buildings, what do we mean? We orientate ourselves by the European standard 16883, which basically includes all buildings with elements worthy of preservation for architectural reasons or cultural or heritage reasons, which means basically we include buildings on all types of different uses from all ages, whether they are listed or somehow protected or not. So what you can see here is a kind of timeline of selected case studies we've already included in our database. On the left side, you can see farmhouses from South Tyrol, which were built already before 1600. But you also would find churches, mercado, but also small or large residential buildings, for example, those cases from Vienna, from typical Gründerzeit buildings. But on the right bottom, you find this office building, which was built in the 1950s and which was renovated and is now used as a community and cultural service building. Sorry. So what you can see here is the beta version of the Hyper Atlas, which means that the database, this platform, is still work in progress. We have now a number of about 15 projects online in this beta version, but the process is now accelerating. We expect to have about 50 case studies before the summer and about 100 case studies by the end of the year. If I say we, I mean all colleagues from our IEA Task 59, but also the colleagues from the Atlas project, and particularly, of course, the team from URAC, with special thanks to Daniel Herrera, who is also with us in the webinar today. He's coordinating not only the review process, but also the technical development of this platform, and also the link to Team Blau, who are the web developers in Italy. So let's step into, I would like to talk you through a little bit through the different levels of information we provide in this platform. On the first level of information, you would see all the contact details, a short summary of each of the case study. You would find images and plans, of course, and if you go a little bit deeper, hopefully well-balanced pictures, drawings, text, also on the renovation process, but also on the technical interventions, walls, windows, HVAC, but also renewable energy systems. And finally, the evaluation part on the energy efficiency costs and indoor climate, for example. This is an example from Vienna. If we here go a little bit deeper, you would find more specific information on this key information, building age, building use, technical data on the building, but you can also step into more detailed information on the renovation process from this point, or on specific information on the retrofit solutions, for example. So if you go down here, you would find a verbal description of retrofit solutions, for example, for the wall, but also reasons why specific interventions were chosen. You find U values, for example, before and after the intervention, but you can go one step deeper. And there you would find, for example, specific information, schematic drawings on the original wall build-up, but also the retrofitted situation. As you know, there are you will find the situation that you have not only one type of wall in a building, particularly in historical buildings. You may find different types of walls, so there's also the possibility to find different solutions for different types of walls for a specific case study. And also the verbal description. And then finally, what is very important from our point of view, the evaluation part, where you find information on the energy efficiency, for example, actual data on the consumption, energy consumption for heating, for example, but also data on not only the investment costs, but also, if available, also the running costs and data on indoor climate. If there are no measured parameters, for example, for this case study, there is also the possibility to give verbal description for example, the feedback from the users on indoor air quality or acoustic comfort. But as you can see here, if there is such a document available, we provide, for example, a post-occupancy evaluation as for a download from this platform. So this is basically the content on the different levels you would find. As you can see on this logos, this is a combined effort from both the Interreg Alpine Space project, which involves 9 partners from 6 countries, and the already mentioned Task 59 from the IEA SHC program, which involves 24 partners from 12 countries. And as I've said, we are aiming at about or more than 100 projects. We are happy to have established already the connection to other platforms, for example, to Construction 21. And we are also looking forward to connections, for example, to national platforms, as, for example, Stadt der Zukunft in Austria, but we know there are other possibilities to establish such platforms. So finally, I would really invite you, if you somehow involved as an architect, as a planner in a renovation of a historic building, which could serve as a case study, please get in touch with us. You might ask, are there specific criteria for such a case study? Yes, it should be a renovation of the whole building. There should be a significant reduction of energy consumption. So as you can see, there is no specific value, but it should be in any case better than business as usual. The project should be implemented and of course heritage value assessed and respected. And the most difficult part, the documentation of technical solutions should be available, and if possible also monitoring data on energy consumption and costs. So please get in touch. Here are coordinates and the email addresses. Thank you for the moment.
Thank you very much, Walter, for this introduction. If now browsing through the Hyper Atlas, seeing the images, experiences of which others have made convinced you, if you want to renovate your building, the next question which arises is how to begin with this. Let's again listen to the South Tyrolean building owners and architects.
Bei der Planungsphase hat man nachher gesehen, dass das Haus voll groß ist und eine riesige Korrektur und für ihn einfach zu groß. Und somit haben wir uns eigentlich entschlossen, Ferienwohnungen auch zu machen auf dem Hof, zudem die hofeigenen Produkte für die Gäste anzubieten und dass die Gäste auch sehen, was in unserem Hof alles drinsteckt, die Natur, die Landwirtschaft, alles mit zu erleben. Und für mich hat sich so auch ergeben, dass ich daheim bleiben kann, dass ich die Ferienwohnungen betreuen kann, mit den Gästen das machen kann und der Mann auf dem Feld arbeiten kann. Aber auch bei der Gemeinschaft, oder beide zusammen die Gäste nachher bei den Hofführungen alles zeigen können.
Wir haben uns entschlossen zu renovieren und einen Neubau zu machen. Also wenn man das, wie er Instagram gezogen hat, ist wie es wert, das ist wunderschön alles und die uns gefallen. Wohl viel gesagt, und ich geschaut mit den alten Tempel beim Haufen schupfen und alles weg, das soll sie nicht aus, aber das ist, wir haben einfach Freude mit alles und es ist schön geworden.
Wenn der Markus mich das erste Mal kontaktiert hat bezüglich dem Umbau, hat er eigentlich schon ganz klare Vorstellungen gehabt. Normalerweise ist ja die Aufgabe oder die Herausforderung, dass man praktisch die ganzen Wünsche, die Vorstellungen und die Visionen von Bauherr umsetzt.
Am Anfang, wenn man an ein denkmalgeschütztes Gebäude herangeht, denkt man sich ja, man kann gar nicht energetisch sanieren, weil man den Eindruck hat, es ist alles geschützt. Ich muss sagen, in unserem Fall war es so, dass wir es eigentlich sehr gut geschafft haben, zusammen mit dem Denkmalamt und auch mit der Klimahausagentur einen guten Weg zu finden, dieses Gebäude energetisch zu sanieren. Es war ein großer Wunsch von den Bauherren, den Komfort dieses Gebäudes zu verbessern. Uns ist es, glaube ich, sehr gut gelungen, mit dem Einbauen von Innendämmung, neuer Fenster, sogar der kontrollierten Lüftung, einer Stückholzheizung, die Integration in Absprache mit dem Denkmalamt von Photovoltaik und Solarthermie. Also wir haben wirklich das ganze Programm geschafft und haben es wirklich geschafft, für die Wünsche und Ansprüche der Bauherren. Der Meierhof ist ein Gebäude, was eine sehr starke Persönlichkeit hat und also war es uns in der Planung wichtig, das Gebäude zu verstehen und es ist überhaupt nicht wichtig gewesen, als Architekt ein Zeichen zu setzen. Es war eigentlich mein Wunsch bei der Planung, das Gebäude wieder aufleben zu lassen und das Gebäude als solches freizuspielen.
The role of the architect is clearly very important in the renovation project. However, these are very complicated projects, usually quite more complicated with more variables than a normal project. How can the architect and the owner be sure that they have considered all measures and evaluated them appropriately? Tor Broström from Uppsala University in Sweden looks within Task 59 specifically at this question on how to organize the multidisciplinary planning project and will explain now how the EN standard 16883 can lead you through the process. Tor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexandra. Hello and good afternoon to all the webinar participants. The title of my presentation is A Systematic Approach for Decision Making and Planning. And the picture you see on the right is from my hometown. It shows the range of buildings we're talking about, from the medieval monumental to the more ordinary buildings of the 20th century. Even though I'm a professor in building conservation, my background is in engineering. My first job out of university, I was an energy auditor, and I found that there was a lot of confusion and misunderstandings when it came to energy renovation of existing buildings. And as Alexandra indicated, the situation becomes even more complex and possibly confusing when we're talking about historic buildings. There are many laws and regulations. There are expectations, implicit and explicit, many different actors, different competencies that are needed. Our solution to deal with this is to propose a more systematic decision process, a systematic approach, step by step, built on transdisciplinary collaboration from the beginning. And this is based on a European guideline for improving the energy performance of historic buildings, EN 16883, which was finished in 2017. The guidelines aim to facilitate the improvement of energy performance of historic buildings while respecting their heritage significance. This deals with, as Walter indicated before, historically, architecturally, or culturally valuable buildings. So it's not limited to listed or otherwise formally protected buildings. It applies to historic buildings of all types and ages. It presents a working procedure which is based on simple steps: investigation, analysis, and documentation of the building, including its heritage significance. Now, this is the Solar Academy, and some of you may think, where does solar energy come into play? Well, the standard deals with improvements and energy renovation, applying both to the demand and supply side. On the left, you see a building that will be externally insulated, where the building envelope will be made more airtight and windows will be improved, all in a way to respect its original significance. On the left, you see, and this is only a photoshopped picture, what it could look like if you put solar panels on the roof of a historic building. And the latter, of course, is something where there are very different opinions, and therefore it's especially needed to take it on with a systematic approach. The standard or the guidelines is really presents a procedure to facilitate the best decision in each individual case, rather than trying to point at good or bad solutions in general, because as we all know, historic buildings as well as buildings in general represent a wide range of uses, construction types, so it's difficult not to say impossible to point at universally applicable solutions, but we rather point at a way to reach a good solution in each case. It includes a step-by-step process with some iterations. Each of the steps are described more in detail in the standard, and here I will only give you a brief overview of each step. Initiating the planning process includes information of things that you need to consider before you get started. Building survey and asset assessment, of course, is important to understand what is the present status of the building in terms of construction, indoor climate, energy performance, what is the present use, what is the foreseen changes in terms of use. Specifying objectives, and usually renovation projects are driven by specific or explicit objectives in terms of energy performance, but it's also important, in order to balance this, to specify objectives in terms of conservation and preservation. The next step would be to decide by comparing the present state of the building in relation to the objectives, we decide if an improvement is needed or not. And then we go on with a procedure to find a package of measures that are appropriate for this building. And this starts with a long list of possible measures. And such a list depends on the regional context, traditions, technology, know-how available. And based on that, we suggest that a transdisciplinary group of professionals, taking into account technical aspects as well as conservation, exclude inappropriate measures that clearly are inappropriate for the building in question. After that, we propose to make a detailed, in-depth assessment of remaining measures with respect to economy, energy performance, indoor climate, impact on the building, physical as well as on aesthetic and heritage values. And that results in a few selected measures in order of priority, and then we group them together in packages. And the final step is to see if the proposed package allows us to fulfill or reach the objectives that we set out from the beginning. For those of you who work professionally in field, I would assume or hope that this is nothing new, but rather something that you recognize. For those of you who may be private homeowners, this may be completely new. So this means that the standard can be used, or the guideline can be used in several ways. You can use it for quality assurance and then follow it strictly. Suppose the authorities in a country or a region want to ascertain that when we work with historical buildings of a certain value category, that we follow a certain procedure. It can be used as an inspiration to modify existing procedures. I think that most professionals working in the field, one way or another, already have a working procedure. And finally, it can be used as a simple checklist as a whole or in parts. Some questions to the audience is if the standard is known, is the standard being used? We're trying to find projects, professionals who have used the standard, and we want to find out how does it work in practice. Within Task 59, we're working to facilitate an extended use of the standard by enhancing it and providing additional information in terms of tools and guidelines, the need for training, and we also have another tools in our toolbox. Walter already introduced the best practice database, and we also have a database for single solutions that are suitable for different types of historic buildings. So in summary, my objective with the presentation was to let you know that there is a standard. There are also other guidelines that can be used, and we're always looking for more case studies. So if anybody is interested to use the standard or already has done it, so please feel free to contact me. And also, of course, if you have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tor. Now, after that look to the decision process, let's go back to the building owners and architects in South Tyrol and see what solution to improve the energy efficiency they have chosen.
Unser Anliegen war jetzt die energetische Sanierung des Hauses, weil ansonsten natürlich kein angenehmes Leben in so einem alten Haus möglich wäre. Wir haben also versucht, das Haus von innen zu isolieren mit 4 cm Dämmung und dann haben wir noch eine Wandheizung realisiert, die zum einen die Wärme an den Raum abgibt und zum anderen die Wände austrocknet.
Unsere Überlegungen für die energetische Sanierung von dem Haus waren auszufinden, welche Bauteile man möglichst einfach dämmen kann, ohne die historische Bausubstanz zu beeinträchtigen. Deswegen haben wir unser Hauptaugenmerk eben auf die Dämmung von den Fußböden und Decken, so die kalten Räume und das Dach gelegt. Zusätzlich haben wir natürlich die Fenster getauscht. Als Heizsystem wurde die Geothermie gewählt, weil die mit auf möglichst kleinem Raum man da die Heizung installieren kann und der unabhängig funktioniert zu relativ geringen Kosten.
Wir haben saniert und haben zugleich ein modernes Wohnen möglich machen müssen. Und da haben wir einfach Gebäudeteile, die der Sonne zugewandt sind, aufgemacht, sodass die Sonne das Haus durchfluten kann und andere in Ruhe gelassen. Nur durch Fensteraustausch, energiesparende Maßnahmen, Dämmungen und ja, eigentlich nichts. Dämmungen versucht, ein modernes, ein Wohlfühlen im Gebäude zu ermöglichen.
Il figlio del proprietario è maestro carpentiere. Con lui abbiamo cercato di realizzare il più possibile la costruzione tipica in legno della Valdultimo, usando loro legname, loro maestranze e naturalmente le parti in pietra, le parti mattoni o le parti tecniche sono state eseguite con le tecniche moderne che noi conosciamo oggi. Il problema fondamentale era creare questo impianto di riscaldamento, questa centrale termica, questo vano e diciamo c'erano 2 opzioni: o intervenire in uno dei locali della cantina, quindi rovinando completamente quello che era l'aspetto originale delle cantine, oppure diciamo creare un vano interrato esterno per non disturbare tutto l'impianto della cantina.
Well, I close the video just to remind the audience that you can already now type in your questions in the chat field. They will be collected by our moderator, grouped and asked afterwards to the single contributors. There are many solutions out there, as you have seen from these examples. The key is knowing which of these are relevant. And also when a solution is safe and when it is compatible with the conservation of that specific building. University of Innsbruck in Austria is leading within Task 59 this collection and finding of conservation compatible solutions. I'd invite now Bärbel Sevela to introduce you to the decision guidance tool. Bärbel, floor is yours.
Good afternoon also from my side. Just a quick check. I hope you see my screen. Yeah, so welcome again, and I'm happy to present you the slides I prepared together with my colleague Eleonora Leonardi and give you a brief status update on the intermediate work towards the, towards the best practice database and decision guidance tool to exemplary energy efficient interventions in historical buildings.
Dear Pavel, could you please show us your other screen? Thank you.
Oh, yes. I thought that will happen. Okay, so let's hopefully it's fine now. All right. So we see the same thing now. So, and as every presentation, I start with a story. So once upon a time, there was an architect, Franz Baumann. He was born in Innsbruck in 1892, and he was a very famous architect for his so-called classic master. And between one of his masterpieces belongs this NMS Hetting School in Innsbruck. He built this building in 1930 in a part of the city called Hetting, and here you see the building. It was very particular for 1930 because it looked very modern back then. It imitated a flat roof, so it had a very low slope, and it looked like a modern building nowadays. You can see it because the difference to the other farmhouses is so significant. It's over here. And you can imagine that it was quite a challenge when we have been told that we're supposed to bring a photovoltaic system on this building. And we were thinking that if we could succeed and agree with the Heritage Office to be able to install a PV system on such a building, it could pave the way to other example buildings in the region that could follow and maybe use the same way in order to extend the power needed by the PV system in times like these, where we have to find solution to the climate change and we need every square meter possible. And as we know, in Europe, there is a very big share of cities with the historical old towns. And you know what? We succeeded. And that's why we've been thinking that this would be a good story to start with. So the Heritage Office actually had just two conditions we had to fulfill and to be able to answer them. So it was not impossible. And in the end, it was quite easy. So the first condition was that it can be permanently installed. So we decided for these clamps to install the PV system. So it's basically a temporary installation. It's a 5 kilowatt peak and could be always extended. The second was a visual condition, that this system should not be visible from the street or for the pedestrians. So we figure out that you would be able to see this PV system if you are 65 square meters far from the building, from the facade, which on the street is not possible because the buildings are much closer to each other. And from the yard, you would need 65 meters, but that's so far away that you are not able to distinguish between the surface of a PV system and the roof having a similar pattern. And after these discussions, it was possible to install the system, and it really happened. So that's why we decided also to create the decision guidance tool to document such a good examples and many more that can show others how to follow such installations and don't start from the beginning, and to share these success stories. So now I will like to show you the functionality of the tool. It's not the real website, but it's just a presentation where you can see how the tool is supposed to work. To be able to cover all the renovation measures, not just solar, but all of them, we decided to display at the first cross-section of a building where is everything involved and everything visible. So the user can, by clicking on the building element, select or select from the menu on the left-hand side. In this case, we would start with the solar energy, right down there, like this. And then the user will be asked just several questions. The first one, for example, if you can install your renewables on the roof as a first, most advantage option. If no, the facilities offered, and so on. And if there is really no other options to install the PV on your building, then at least we would like to display solutions where there is a freestanding installation allowed, or participation models of renewables via power network. So if we would use the same mentality, and we would like to find this example of school in Hetting, we would probably go like this. So renewables on the roof, yes, but it should be roof non-integrated. Here we go, and then we click a preview, and then we're gonna see all the details about the installations and components, installation powers, and drawings. So as I said, this tool is not restricted only to renewables, but as you see, to building envelope, such as walls, windows, roof, and so on, but also building services as heating, cooling, ventilation systems. So let's proceed with the example of our walls. So we click on wall. Because wall is such a particular solution, it makes sense to pre-select certain types of buildings. You can click on the region where the building is in the map, or if you don't want to restrict your search, you can just skip. And if you decide to use the map, you will be offered a set of archetypes, certain architectonical type of buildings. You select yours, and as before, you will be asked several set of questions, which will break down the selection just to several. So you will be able to see and decide for general principles or particular examples of, in this case, wall insulation. Since the walls are very much in connection with the windows, for example, after choosing your detail, you will be directed also and offered also to see the window details, because these cross sections and details really matters while you plan your renovation. As you see here, each solution has a magnifier and a shopping bag. I will get back to it. We are not a profit-oriented European project, don't worry. So the magnifier is just there to increase the size and be able to read what is inside, and the shopping bag is basically just to save it into your bag for later printout. So if you click on the magnifier, you see the solution, and same like before, you can get yourself more informed what is this solution is about. And if you would like to save it, you click on the shopping bag. If this solution is a part of the building, which is documented as a building, as a renovated building, so-called best practice, that was the part presented by Walter. You can also jump and see the building renovation in the database itself. So, and when you are done with playing and searching in the tool, you can go to this shopping bag or shopping trolley, where are all your saved details and solutions, and you can click and export them to a PDF once you're finished. So let me conclude. What is this tool about, and why it should matter to you? So it follows this mentality. We start with the problem. We help you to define the renovation measure in a visual way. Then, by associating the archetypes, we guide you, the user, to appropriate a renovation approach to find the exact solution you are searching and helping you. And if documented, we're going to demonstrate on a real case study where the solution was implemented. So the message is to inspire the user to renovate and not to rebuild, not to demolish, but keep the old spirit and prevent the European heritage we have here by demonstrating the real solutions. So as before, I just would like to show the website and my contact, and I would like to give the word back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pavel. For the very end, to conclude with, I would ask my colleague Daniel Herrera to actually show you, with taking the Rheinhof as an example, the whole process, from this definition of the aim, the interaction with the conservation authorities, to the solutions adopted.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Herrera, and as Alexander already mentioned, I will guide you through the renovation of one particular case study. For that, I will be using the website of the Hyper Atlas, so the database of the energy retrofit of historic buildings, where this particular building has been already documented. The Rheinhof is a farmhouse built around the 16th century in Santa Maddalena, in the north part of Italy, in the middle of the Alps. As you can see in the documentation of the project in the website, we already have all the information that characterizes this project in the top menu. We can see that the final energy performance of this building after the renovation achieved 60 kilowatt hour per square meter per year, although it is in a high altitude. It's around 1,500 meters above sea level, so that should be considered when assessing the final energy performance of this building. The building, it is listed. It is under heritage protection in the region of the province of Bolzano, or is not part of a conservation area. It was built before 1600 and it has never been renovated before. Originally, it was used as a residential building in a rural setting, and now it's been changed to holiday apartments. The square area, just briefly mentioned, that is around 400 square meters. It's a detached house and is made of 3 floors with no basement, and a total surface area or envelope area of more than 650 square meters. The building is built with a stone masonry wall on the ground floor and a block bow, so a solid wood construction in the upper floors. It is rendered externally and plastered on the inside, directly on the structural system, and it has a pitched roof. If we jump to the renovation process, we get into the description of the building. So how the building before any intervention was, and that's the process that the architects followed together with the owners in understanding the particularities of this building. This is one of the most precious rural buildings of the area, and it just placed off the main road in a prominent position. It is one of the first buildings you see when you came into this village. As I said, the ground floor was built with solid stone masonry walls, whereas the first and top was built with a vernacular block bow, solid wood construction, and the building presents many traditional features, such as windows with deep reveals that are highly decorated, and then vaulted ceilings around the entrance. Regarding the heritage significance of the building, the building is a Bauhof, that is a traditional rural building where the 2 main functions of the building were separated. So there was one building that was accommodating the dwelling functions, and the second building where all the farming was developed. The building was the main residential building was accommodating 3 different generations living under the same roof, and it was mainly occupied in the living room and kitchen, the only 2 rooms that were actually heated. The 3 main facades of the building are under heritage protection and should be kept. The ground floor that is built in stone masonry still preserves or still conserves the traditional lime plaster, and therefore any intervention to the outside had to be ruled out since the very beginning. The window and door openings in the ground floor have these deep reveals and are fully decorated around it. The entrance with the vaulted ceiling, also called as Labe in the region, it is a precious and very unique feature that should be also kept. The Stube, the main living room in the ground floor, it is decorated with wooden cladding and has all the sections with high decorations. The negotiation of the heritage assessment or the heritage value of this building was always held in collaboration with the Heritage Authority of the province of Bolzano. At the very beginning of the project, a dialogue was set between all the parties involved, the property owners, the architects and designers of the building, and the Heritage Authority responsible for this area. After a first meeting, the architects involved in the project developed a proposal, and 8 months later, the project design team met again and agreed on the final solutions to be implemented. In general, the building was in good state, although there was one corner of the building that was damaged due to salt contamination because of a nearby septic tank, and the wooden construction around the balcony in the first floor was slightly damaged. As I mentioned before, the only two rooms that were heated originally in the building were the kitchen and the stube. Both on the ground floor are both heated with open fire that are fed with the log walls from the region. The aim of the retrofit, or what the owner wanted to achieve with the renovation of this building, was to bring the building back to its best days and to find a solution that will improve the comfort of the occupants and reduce the energy consumption of the whole. That also meant a change of use in order to occupy the whole space of the building as a way to finance the project and as a sustainable occupation of the building. The owner decided to occupy the ground and first floor and rent the rest as holiday apartments for visitors of the area. In the next section of the website, you can find all the people that were involved, all the stakeholders that were involved in the renovation of this project, from the architect, the conservation consultants, the energy consultants, as well as the Südtiroler Bauernbund, the Association of Farmers of the province of Bolzano, that had awarded a prize to this project for being one of the best farmhouse renovations in the region in the year 2016. In the next section of the website, we come to the specific retrofit solution. Starting from the external walls, as it was mentioned earlier by Walter Hudler, we find a building that has many different wall type constructions, and all of them are listed here, describing how the solution was compatible with the conservation of the building and how it had improved the final performance of the same. Starting from the ground floor, in the parts where the walls were internally plastered, the plaster was renovated with a thermal insulation plaster that can be applied directly on the wall and can follow the unevenness of any surface. On the section below, we can see the technical data of its solution. So starting from a U value of 2.39 watts per square meter Kelvin, the U value or the final thermal conductivity of the wall was reduced to 0.87. If we click on the more detailed section, we can see a sketch of the wall from the construction before that was made of plaster, a stone masonry wall and plaster, to a retrofitted wall build-up in which the internal insulation plaster has been added. The same structure is followed for all the other wall types. From the stube, where the insulation is added in between the stone masonry wall and internal wooden cladding, the substitution of the ground floor in the rear part of the building, and the insulation of the block bound, the solid wood construction, with a wood fiber board panel applied to the inside. When it comes to the windows, the original wooden windows that were painted in a bright blue color were replicated with new units that were crafted by a local carpenter who designed a modern window with thermal glazing that can be implemented in a frame that replicates the original unit. Also, the roof and the ground floor were insulated, and the U value of the thermal conductivity of these parts of the envelope were highly improved. In the case of the roof, from 2.7 watts per square meter Kelvin, the value was reduced to 0.2, and in the case of the ground floor, from 3.29, it was brought down to 0.28. Also, the heating and domestic hot water systems were replaced. In this case, the original heating system, as I explained before, was based on open fires that were fed directly with log walls. And now there is a combined system that uses both biomass and biogas, both produced on site. The biomass is directly produced or directly brought from the woodlands that is around the farm, whereas the biogas, it's obtained from the manure of the cattle that is reared in this farm. Eventually, all the energy produced directly on site from the renewable energy sources is enough to cover all the energy demand from the main house, the Rheinhof, with the private residence and all the holiday apartments, plus all the farming activities, plus a nearby house, and there's still some excess of energy produced. Eventually, the last part of the documentation of this project brings us to the evaluation of the project. In this region, in this part of the world, the energy certification of our renovation is not compulsory. However, the design team, together with the owners, decided to follow an energy certification as a way to identify the potential for the renovation of this building. As I said earlier, the final energy consumption, as it was calculated, was brought down to 60 kilowatt-hour per square meter per year. That equals to a class C in the region of Bolzano. There is no, unfortunately, available data for the monitoring of the energy consumption. What we do have is the results of the post-occupancy evaluation that was performed by interviewing the owners and occupants of this building. In general, the feedback we received was extremely positive, as the comfort, indoor air quality, and finally, final energy consumption was improved greatly. And with this, I would like to invite you to go to the website and visit all these details that are available to all already. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Danielle. In theory, also for this case, we would have a video subtitled, but in order to allow for enough time for questions, we will just provide you with the YouTube link to it. With this, I give over to Bärbel for the question and answers.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexandra. I think I like very much the mix of letting end customers of the renovated buildings speak and explain their motivation and their, well, better living after renovation. We have received a lot of interesting questions, and I think I will start with Alexandra with a bit of a general one. Michael Fremov, he asked us whether the task participants ever have done a more general assessment on the protection degrees of different countries. So what are the biggest differences in terms of finding conservation and renovation approaches and the influence on architectural freedom in different countries? This is probably a challenging one, Alexandra, but maybe you can talk from your experiences.
I think I would talk from my experiences. So I have been working at this interface of technical solutions and conservation for about 20 years now. And I would say, yes, of course, there are differences between countries. And I can tell you that each country is convinced they are the most severe ones. But I think the difference are especially among the buildings. And as soon as you can show that you understand the building and find the good solutions for the building, I think, yeah, ways open up. And of course, you will not reach, so we called the task towards net zero energy, because we think that the aim is to go with an ambitious target towards that. How far we reach will depend on the single case.
So is it, there's another question which is a bit general, asking for, you know, the approach of applying for work to be done on a heritage building. Can this be generalized, how these design decision processes with state authorities work? Or what is recommended if you have such an approach in front of you?
What we see if we look at the documented cases and the brought-in cases is that if you manage to get in a dialogue early, you have it more constructive. Then what is formally needed, that might vary from area to area. But to kind of proactively look for the contact and involve is usually a key to success.
Okay, good. So I have a question for Pavel. One of our participants wants to know whether this tool is possibly openly available that you introduced.
Hello. If it's open, and so I didn't understand the question. If it's open.
Well, if it can be used by accessible by everybody.
Yes, it will be accessible. But as we plan the release by end of the project, it's April, May 2021, maybe even earlier via some beta version. It needs a little bit more time. We are still, as shown on the presentation, in a stage of development, and so-called working groups on the different topics, like such as solar and walls and windows, building envelope, still documenting the solutions. So please follow our social media. Probably the best way would be to either on LinkedIn or Facebook to search for Project Atlas. Just written as an English word, Atlas. Project Alpinus, Project Interreg, and you will be then informed about the release of this website.
Okay, perfect. And Bärbel, also for you, somebody asked us, is there the ultimate solution for building retrofit regarding the heating system?
Retrofit regarding heating system?
I mean, the solution for the heating system in retrofitted historic buildings.
Okay, I will define the question my way. So I will understand if there is the source of heating, so energy source and a way of transmitting the heat in the building, which is ultimately universal to any building. Of course not. Otherwise there would not be so many. The source of energy slash the way of transmitting the heat into the heated space is highly dependent on the energy consumption, energy demand of the building, of course. So you can say that as better you insulate, as lower energy demand we have, as more universal, as more open options you have. As example, so if you have a heritage building and you don't make any thermal improvements, it would be very difficult to heat with a heat pump, because then you would need a very, very high heating area where you're gonna include this thermal activation, such as floor and walls. But if the building is also thermally insulated, you would be able to use the heat pump only by temperating the floor, because for heat pump you can go high with the temperature of the surface, for example. But it's a very exciting topic, heating of the space. As I said, it depends on the energy demand, and I'm pretty sure that when the tool is ready, that you will be able to find the best for you.
Okay, perfect. Walter, some questions as a more practical person. Somebody is wondering how the challenge of condensation in insulated walls, I suppose, which are internally insulated, can be avoided, you know? It's Kevin O'Rourke's question.
Yeah, this is important part that we also discussed this, of course, in our group of the IEA task, and the general answer is to do the building physics as good as possible, and really on a detailed level. So this is the only general answer you can give. So there is no specific solution, no general solution, technical solution you can give for certain types of buildings. You have to inspect the building and do the building physics calculation for each building under the specific climate condition in every case.
Okay. Another technical one, there was somebody stressing the fact that the U values, you know, the wall insulation values were not so ambitious in some of the case studies presented in the film. So how do you find compromises in terms of having low energy and having the heritage conservation needs of the building if you plan such renovation processes?
Yeah, that's a specific challenge with historic buildings. Normally you try to improve the building shell, let's say the wall, the windows, the roof as much as possible in order to cover the remaining demand with renewables. In this case, in the case of historic buildings, we have to take compromises. Many of them are regarding the building shell. Let's say about windows. We've seen examples where it's possible to replace the original windows with new windows at a normal or innovative standard, but in other cases it depends very much on the monument protection authority if a replacement of the windows is possible, or if you have to keep the whole window in the original version, or you can keep parts of the windows. So these compromises depend very much on the building and on the requirements from the Monument Protection Authority, which is in place.
Okay, thank you. And another question regarding costs. You know, Kevin asked you, do you have information about the cost of the renovation? That means energy versus other measures, you know, in the final cases. Is this part of the Hyber Atlas, or where is cost accessible?
It is part. If you look at the evaluation section at the bottom of each case study, you will find a specific section on costs, where you will find the information on the investment costs, but which is even more important, information on the running costs, particularly the energy costs. Unfortunately, this is data which is not available for all the case studies, but in some cases we also have life cycle cost assessments for the specific case study, and you would find this data, if available, also on the website.
Okay, perfect. Tor, there is an interesting question from Col Murray from the Heritage Council in Ireland. He's asking you regarding this norm that you presented, and I will read out his question. Can the EN 16883 approach be integrated with the IBORD Energy Renovation Passport approach, which means accepting that the renovation process can be broken into several sequential sub-projects, for instance, not just creating a short list of measures all to be completed at one time, but also prioritizing these and breaking them into packages that can occur at different times in sequence. This has the advantage to reducing the risk of unintended interactions between multiple measures, ensuring that user behavior in relation to energy usage leads to genuine energy reduction. A long question, but I think a very interesting one. Can you give us your insights on that, Tor?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think in the field of renovation, there are already a number of guidelines, national ones, international ones, and the guidelines I presented for historic buildings are really quite generic and would apply to most buildings. So I don't think it's a question of one or the other, or rather, as the question implies here, that you could somehow use them together. So I think on the one hand, you could start with the IBORD Energy Renovation Passport and look at the guidelines for historic buildings and see other sections that we could integrate to focus on the aspects particular to historic buildings, or vice versa. You could use the guidelines for historic buildings as your backbone, and then you could select the approach where you divide a big project into to smaller sub-projects, which I think is quite interesting. So I think there's a lot to do generally in terms of realizing that what we're talking about, energy, improving energy performance in historic buildings, is part of a bigger picture, which is renovation and general management of historic buildings. So in short, my answer is yes, I'd be happy to discuss this with the person who asked the question. Thank you.
Good. Tor, also a short question for you, and then we are already more or less at the end of our time. There's somebody asking about experiences if the building is already in a state of being very old, and he uses the word combustible due to ages past, and still starting a retrofit project. Do you have experiences with such kind of buildings in a very low state of performance?
Yeah, we've experienced a range of buildings from the ones that are in use and in quite good conditions to the ones as that could be described as combustible, even though that's a rather radical expression. And I think it goes back to what I've said and what Walter says is you need to look at each building. So you could have a building with very high heritage values that's in a terrible condition physically, and there will be no doubt that you want to preserve it. So you need to look at the overall picture and balance the physical status with the heritage values, and then make an initial decision based on that.
Good. I think altogether you were really encouraging to all planners and architects who have something worth conserving in front of them to work with as well the authorities at an early stage and the users at an early stage, and try to get different ways done for a good retrofit solution. Thank you very much to everybody. Thanks to the participants for their nice questions, and good afternoon to everybody. I pass over to Arabella.
Thank you very much, Bärbel, and thank you very much to all of our speakers, and of course you, the audience, for joining us. And I think we have had many great presentations. The videos really made a difference, and they had a really nice touch. And also many of the questions, we received so many questions. So thank you all for this lively webinar. Now, before we end the webinar for today, we here at ISIS are very happy to share two more important events that are coming up for us in 2020. And we are very happy to invite all of you to join us at one of them, or maybe at both. And I'm going to show them to you in a second. So the first one in September this year, we invite you to join us in Greece for the Eurosun 2020, which is the 13th International Conference on Solar Energy for Buildings and Industry. And I know that in past Eurosuns, we've seen case studies that were presented on historic renovations together with solar energy. So this is just the right place to come and look for solar in buildings. The call for participation for this event will be issued next week, and we are very much looking forward to you joining us in Greece and presenting your work there. And then secondly, later this year in December, ISIS will be hosting a very special event in Australia, which is called the SWC 50, the Century of Solar. With this event, we will celebrate 50 years of ISIS Solar World Congresses, as the first ever ISIS Solar World Congress was held back in Melbourne in 1970. This event will highlight the incredible success story of solar over the last 50 years, and we will look to the future where renewable energy will be the major cornerstone of the global energy system. The call for this special event is now open, and you can find more information online at swc50.org. And now for my final announcement for today. There will be, of course, a recording of the webinar, and it will be available both on the ISIS as well as the IEA SHC homepage in a few days. For our ISIS members, please remember that you have unlimited access to all past webinar recordings, as well as the presentations throughout the ISIS members area. Now, on behalf of ISIS, we thank all of you and, of course, our great set of speakers for your participation in today's webinar. We are always looking forward to your feedback. You can write to us at publicrelations@isis.org, and there's a survey coming out to you, and we very much invite you to complete it. So, thank you, everybody, again for joining us today. We very much hope you enjoyed the webinar. We will now end, and we wish all of you a great day. Goodbye.